My name is Marilyn Weber. I was in a dry and parched place, and God led me to a well-watered garden. I'd like to tell you my story.
Where would I be without your love? Where would I be without your grace? Father in heaven above, all of my sins you erased. You saved me from a life of misery and rewrote my history. This is my story, and to you be the honor and glory, y'all. Resurrected, born again, no longer a slave of this world I'm living in. Broke the chains that held me down, I've been set free, so let me testify.
Marilyn, your story has such a beautiful beginning. There's this sweet, innocent, carefree little girl who is so in love with Jesus until that world started to unravel. Your comeback, though, is like a musical feast, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, tell me about that little girl who was so in love with Jesus.
Oh, I was smitten with him, and I don't remember, honestly, if I actually invited him into my heart. It was just like there was this presence of him around me as a little girl, and I was a pretty happy little kid. My dad had contracted polio when that epidemic came around in the 1950s, and he ended up being confined to an iron lung for 2.5 years. And he passed away when I was 3.
Now, Mom and Dad, before your dad passed away, they had a deep faith in God.
They did. Both of them born-again Christians. And I know that deep faith is exactly what got my mom through all those years to follow, raising us 5 kids alone. Mother had a beautiful relationship with the Lord. She was a very fine example of a believer. She taught us well. She put into practice everything that she believed in and held dear. Her times in worship were very sweet, and her prayer time with the Lord was very sincere. She was a really fine example. My father, too, had a very strong faith. He even cut a tape for us kids to leave a sense of his own faith, even while he was in the lung. You would hear the lung press on his chest, and then he would be able to speak, and then it would press down again, and he would be able to speak. But it was really him wanting so much to pass on his faith to us kids as a legacy.
Now, because of that faith, church was an important part of your upbringing, due to your parents' faith. But your experience with church became somewhat sour.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
My teenage years were a little tumultuous. On top of that, our church moved into preaching hellfire and brimstone messages. And honestly, the thoughts of hell terrified me as a little girl. And so every time I'd hear one of these messages, I would make my way to the altar to confess my sins and pray, Lord, just help me not be a sinner anymore. I remember time after time, Sunday after Sunday, going to the altar and hearing about how horrible the sinner I was, and I felt awful. I started feeling really awful about myself, like I'm just not making the mark here. But gradually that wore away at my relationship with the Lord, and what I had, which was a delightful little joy-filled relationship with the Lord, it was starting to get kind of unraveled.
And at that point, if I remember correctly, you were around 18, 19, 20 years of age. And so you had enough of being
I
made
did.
to feel bad. So you made an adult decision
Yeah.
spiritually.
Yeah.
What was that?
Oh. In fact, I got so fed up with finding out how awful a person I was and realizing what a sinner I was. I just thought I was hopeless. And I gave up on myself. Worse than that, I gave up on God altogether. He had become to me a merciless judge. Ultimately, I left home and I left the church and I ran away from God. When I left home, I also left the church, and I was running away from God at that time. I was quite lost, and with God edited out of my life at that point, it made it especially difficult to figure out where I was headed and what my purpose was. It was a really, really difficult time. In fact, I went into quite a depression after that. In fact, that was even when I was first married. Pretty much lost in where I was going, who I was.
So you ran away from God, but you also ran toward and to your future husband, Gary.
Yes.
But when you met and got together, it didn't go so well, did it?
Gary was amazing. My sister married a man who was a very good friend of Gary's. That's how he came into my life. He was invited over to my sister's place where I was, and he and my brother-in-law carried on this long conversation about Stettler, and it was a very monotonous evening, to say the least. But fast forward a little bit, we went out on a date, we got along really well, and we were probably engaged within the first 6 months that we had met, and married in the next couple of months. So we didn't even know each other a year. When I met him, I was absolutely smitten with him, head over heels in love with him. And the icing on the cake for me was that Gary had never known about having a personal relationship with Jesus. He wouldn't be trying to coerce me to go back into my relationship with the Lord. So that was great at that time. However, in time, our marriage, the honeymoon kind of ran out, as it does for everybody. But for me, I found there was something that just felt off about our marriage, and I could not put my finger on what it was. It was just something that felt wrong. I had a good friend that I would confide in. She and I would talk about it, and we'd throw out ideas and just kind of try to make sense of what this was all about. But nothing ever really materialized in our conversations.
Now, this friend that you just spoke about, a good friend, until one day you found out something about her.
Oh, yes, I did.
And that created a bit of a problem.
Yeah, it did. Well, one day she came for coffee and she unloaded this great news, which she thought was great news, that she had become a born-again Christian. Of all things, she was now I'd have been happy if she'd have told me she had become pretty near anything. But a born-again Christian, that was the worst. Here's my good friend that I've been confiding in and enjoying for so many years. And now, when I met with her, I would be looking into the face of Jesus. because Jesus now lived in her. That was such a contrast of interests. I loved my friend, and I was still running from Jesus as far as I could.
Now, to make things more uncomfortable with this friend, there was a day that came that she needed your help.
Mm-hmm.
What did she ask you to do?
She was an adventurous and ambitious woman. She was taking university courses, and she had 3 little kids, and it was Christmas. And then her husband put the house on the market for sale. And so I said to her, oh my gosh, what can I do to help you? I mean, this is a fiasco. And then she said, I know what you can do. My little church needs a piano player. You can do that.
So tell me about that experience. The pastor, the church, choir. How did it all turn out?
To be honest, it's a wonder that the pastor let me in because of my attitude that was a mile high and a mile wide. But he did. He was a gentle shepherd, and probably God ordained for me, because he was just what I needed, because I could rant and rave and talk about get the things out of my system that had so upset me or so stuck in my craw or upset me whatever way. And he'd just nod and he would say, I know. All the obstacles, the walls that I'd built up against the church and God and all of that, they were coming down. And one day, in my quiet time at home, I made a recommitment to the Lord. Having said that, I still had a lot of rough edges and attitudes that I needed to work out, right? At one of our choir practices, one of the members handed me a pamphlet after choir practice was over to say that there is a choir workshop coming to Calgary. Would I be interested in going? And I said, of course not. I know, that's a no. But then on my way home, I said, okay, Lord, is this something that you want me to do? Because if it is, I will go. So we did this, and this conductor started to tell us a story. And the story was that a pastor had announced to his congregation that they were going to have a church picnic. Well, one lonely man in the group, in the congregation, turned up with his little dried up bologna sandwich. When he got there, there was a woman who called him over and said, come join us. We're going to have, this. She prepared a fried chicken feast. Everything that you can imagine, all the trimmings. And he was kind of embarrassed because he had nothing to offer. And she said, oh, come on. We will share your bologna sandwich, and you can share our fried chicken. That story was a picture of me. That was my heart. I was that little dried up bologna sandwich. The picture was of the feast that Jesus wanted to bring back into my life, replacing this bologna sandwich with this amazing feast. At the same time, I had a vision, and the vision was two-sided, 2 frames. On the left side, there was a seed blowing around in this burning hot desert, not going anywhere, not any hope of ever taking root. And on the other frame was a well-watered garden, lush, waterfall, humid, beautiful. And I knew that was what God wanted to do in my heart. In fact, had done in my heart. I was totally transformed. I have never been the same again. The next time I went to choir practice, I was so not the same person. Whereas before, I had been uninspired and whatever, and we'll just get through this and all that. And now it was fasten your seatbelt, because I was passionate. I had been so overwhelmed with the extravagant love of Jesus that had poured into me and all over me. I was so passionate that now I wanted these people to understand that the message they were delivering in their music was so important to the people that were listening. They had to hear, they had to know the incredible love of Jesus and what he had in store for them should they surrender to him.
You had mentioned that your marriage to Gary, your marriage was in shambles. But like you personally were transformed, Jesus did the same in your marriage as well.
Yes.
Can you briefly kind of describe what he did and what it's like today for you?
Every year, Gary and I would go to Banff for a conference. And this year was no different. All this stuff, these changes had happened, but we were going to head to this conference. And on the way in the car, I said to Gary, wow, do you feel what I feel? It feels like God is in this car. And he was like, oh, I don't. I said, yeah, Gary, I just feel, it feels so powerful. It's God. And not only in it, but around the car. We're in a God bubble. And so that was super interesting. Like, what's that all about? But we got to the conference, and Saturday morning, I noticed that Gary had pushed his chair back and was kind of reflective. He said to me, after lunch, I'd like to meet in our hotel room and talk. Okay, we'll meet in the hotel room and talk. And my girlfriend and her husband had been at the conference with us, and they joined us in our room. Well, Gary proceeded to confess to me, that he had had multiple sexual relations with multiple women over the course of our married life. What I discovered after Gary made his confession was I surprised myself. I was different. I reacted in a way that I was not anticipating. I don't think anybody else in the room was either, to be honest. But whatever had happened in the car was what had caused me to say, this will not tear us apart, and it was adamant. It surprised me how I didn't have moments of doubt that we should be together, we should remain together. That bubble was God impressing steadfastness in me, a strength in me that I was going to need to weather the storms ahead as we worked through all the marriage issues that we had.
Today, your marriage. Briefly, can you describe it?
It's a well-watered garden. Like what God had done in my spirit, so has he done in our marriage. And I feel so grateful to him for infusing that steadfastness in me. but also giving Gary the strength to make that confession. I recognize that's not an everyday thing that a person does, but God had strengthened his conviction to such an extent he was willing to do it. And it was a huge statement to me to say, this marriage is worth it. I'm going to put my neck on the line here, and I'm going to hope, pray for the best. God has been so good, so faithful. And I feel that joy that I did as a little girl, like a kid. I feel that sense of joy in my heart.
Marilyn's story involved a tangled mess of anger, bitterness, and heartbreak. Her wild emotions are not foreign to any of us. But the one she loved so much as a little girl had a plan to bring her back to whom she belonged. You are never lost in the sight of Jesus. He longs for you to open your heart and invite him in. May I encourage you to do so. It's simple. Believe by asking Jesus to forgive you of all your sin. He will come in, and your life will never be the same. Please call our 24/7 prayer line at 1-866-273-4444. If you want to learn more about the gospel of Jesus Christ and how it can transform your life, you can request a free Bible by calling Sherwood Global at 1-888-482-4253.
Isaiah 58, verse 11, the Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your needs in parched places and make your bones strong. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters never fail.